Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. All the characters in the story who enter into intimate relationships are over 18 years old. I heard a ringing, a soft bell that made me realize that I was needed at the door. It was Friday night, and we had a big crowd. I caught the barman's eye and pointed to the door. It was probably an invited guest who arrived late. I will check if they are on the list, let them into the lobby, and ask the club members to accompany them. No one was allowed inside without an escort of the club. If they weren't on the list, I would have received confirmation before they could enter. There were two men about my age, in their early 30s, standing in the doorway. Even if they had been invited, they would not have been allowed in because they were wearing jeans and t-shirts. Jeans were not allowed, only collared shirts and trousers. Although you never knew for sure who was who. One of our richest owned two construction companies, one of which specialized in laying water pipes. He would show up covered in mud from head to toe, slip into the locker room, take a shower, and put on the clothes he kept there before going to the bar. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I help you with something?" I asked politely. "We need to talk to Jerry Stone. Bring him to the door." I didn't like his attitude, but he asked me. Maybe they were looking for a job, and we were improving the golf course. I held out my hand. "It's me. I'm Jerry Stone, and you?" That's all I had time to say before the taller one caught me off guard with a right hook. Before I could react, a shorter and heavier man hit me, knocking me down. Have you ever noticed that you think about the strangest things when under pressure? I thought about how far I had come from the biker bars where I started, where I perceived everyone as a threat, to the country club where I now worked, with its politeness and sophistication. They laid me down, and pretty well when I was lucky. The police chief of our small town and the assistant district attorney, himself a former policeman, have just entered. The chief let out a scream, and they pushed them away from me. I went berserk, ready for anything. But by that time, the chief had them both under a small revolver that he always carried with him, which was required for his job. His service weapon was a Glock, but he didn't think it was a good idea to advertise that he was armed. So he kept a revolver in his pocket, a Smith & Wesson .327. I shot one, and for their size, they're damn good. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I was almost screaming. "Who are you?" "You know who we are, bastard. We're the husbands of the two wives you slept with." Now I was really angry. "Listen, idiots, I've never seen you or your wives before, as far as I know. I don't date married women. This leads to stupid things like this happening." The assistant prosecutor was grinning. "Thanks for sparing our tender ears, Jerry, but these guys are really jerks. Do you want to press assault charges? I could find some pretty good witnesses." I looked at them. They both looked like they were going to shit their pants, thinking about what might happen. The chief grinned. "Yes, aggravated assault. Illegal entry into someone else's territory. It will be true, because they came here specifically to harm you. We could probably figure out something else if we think about it." The shorter one looked really scared. The taller one still looked furious. "We wouldn't be here if that asshole wasn't making love to our wives. It's his fault. You make it very tempting to press charges. What makes you think I'm sleeping with your wives? I'll give you one chance to tell your story, but not here, in front of the club members." I turned to the chief and the assistant district attorney. "Will you accompany our guests here to the office? I'd really like to sort this out." I turned to them. "You wouldn't mind giving us a few minutes of your time, would you? I'd like to settle this now before you decide to hide in the dark and wait for me." The tone of my voice made it clear to them that this was not a request. The boss first made them give him their documents, and then we entered my office. "Speak up. Why do you think I'm fooling around with your spouses?" "Because those stupid fools told us," the tall one growled. "With those exact words? Is Jerry Stone making love to me?" The little man spoke up. "Yes, to a large extent. They even told us where you were." "Really? Anyway, can you get them to come and check it out?" "Damn right. These stupid fools are waiting for us in the car." They described the car, and the assistant prosecutor went outside and invited them in. They entered timidly. One had a pretty good bruise on her cheek. The other had bruises on her arms. It looked like someone had squeezed her too hard. They weren't ugly or beautiful, just average. If they weren't bruised and scared to death, they could have been much more beautiful. One looked around in confusion. "Ladies, Do I know you? I asked softly, trying to calm them down. I've never seen you before, mister. Where's Jerry? This man said he was here, she said, pointing to the lawyer. What about you? I asked the other. Do I look familiar to you? No. What the hell is going on here? I pulled out my wallet and showed her my license. Are you Jerry Stone? Are there two of you here? Sorry, ladies, I'm the only one with that name here. The men began to look even more furious. The tall one, obviously the smartest in this company, barked at his wife. You fool, you better not lie to me. Obviously, he was trying to put himself in jail. I swear, I do not know this guy, his wife wailed. The chief has heard enough. Boys, apologize to this man and promise him that he will never see you again, and he may not press charges. I have your ID. I think I'll call Sheriff Costner. Let him know about your little adventure. He took out his phone and took some pictures of the bruises. I'm sure he'll come by tomorrow to check on these ladies. If he finds any more bruises, he won't be a happy man. His mother was beaten by his father, and he doesn't really tolerate such things. Make up or spend the night away from each other. Is that clear? They nodded, looking ashamed. I let them go. It wasn't worth the trouble of going to court. After warning them that I wouldn't be so lenient if I saw them again, I let them go. We walked them to the door, and I wondered how women could be seduced by the same guy. Either he had a mile-long line of shit, or they were really dumb. I suspected a mixture of both. As soon as we entered the lobby, a man came in and headed for the bar. He barely noticed us, but one of the women stopped. Jerry? He looked around and turned pale. Both girls were shouting my name. He turned around and ran out the door. Men, women, and the chief rushed after him. The assistant prosecutor looked at me and grinned. The mystery is solved, right? I just sighed, went back to the bar and made a phone call. I never wanted to be a bartender. It just happened that way. My parents had 6 children. Mom stayed at home to raise us, and Dad worked every hour he could at the paper mill. There wasn't much left for school, and not a penny for higher education. My uncle had a grill bar, a real hole, but he poured an honest drink. The kitchen was clean, and the food was good and reasonably priced. He gave me my first job, serving tables and washing dishes. I went from that to a cook for short orders, and when I grew up, I started working in a bar. On the way, I took lessons in a variety of subjects. For example, how to recognize trouble. It's unlikely that these are any noisy ones who start to get rowdy. They were quiet ones that needed to be watched. Something could upset them, and they were left alone, switching to the drink and think mode, as my uncle liked to say. Then they will get a magic drink and explode. I found out that in my district, if someone started trouble, you didn't call the police, you handled it yourself. Call them too often, and they'll shut you down for interfering with them. Besides, when you're working, there's no such thing as a fair fight. You want to minimize the impact on the crowd before they decide to join you. That's why you attack them hard and fast and hurt them. Do it once or twice, and they will learn to behave themselves. I had a few bumps and bruises, so I learned to fight, rough and tumble at first, but I got tired of getting hit, so I took some lessons. I didn't need a belt. I just wanted to be able to protect myself. When I was 20, my uncle shot a guy who stabbed him. He did not go to prison, but the church ladies rebelled, and he had to close his institution. For many years, I have worked in the best places, went to school part-time. I even went to a bartending course and tried to keep a straight face long enough to get a certificate. I have almost completed my last year, and I will soon have a degree in hotel management. I worked in this job for 3 years, working my way up from bartender to assistant manager. I was also in charge of the restaurant. I worked a lot for 10 to 12 hours a day, but I never complained. I hoped that in a few years I would become the general manager of the club, and in a place like the Briarwood Country Club, it brought in almost a 6-figure salary. I could work so much because I didn't have a big personal life. I've never been married. The divorce rate in Russia today is astronomical, one of the highest in the country per profession. I was serious about one girl, and she got into the habit of coming over while I was working so we could spend my breaks together. She was young, bored, beautiful, and the wolves surrounded her, coaxed her, and fed her alcohol, until one night she disappeared. I went outside and found her in the back seat of some jerk's car, her panties hanging off her ankle. I beat the shit out of him, dumped her, and went to work in a better place. She tried to apologize, and I sincerely believed it, but the damage was done. My uncle felt a little sorry for me, but he laughed. What did you expect? Letting her hang around was like taking your prize chicken to a weasel convention. One universal truth that I would learn in this profession is that there is always someone who wants a bartender, from socialites to barflies and fools. It didn't take me long to figure out what it was. If you angered the right husband or boyfriend, wife or daughter, you were out the door. I've learned to find balance by flirting a little with my wives and girlfriends while keeping my distance, and I have never come close to crossing the line, either to the intended offer or to the direct one. Sometimes it was quite difficult. The ladies had their own cards, and in fact, they were here much more often than their men, who worked to maintain their lifestyle. The advantage was that they found out that they could trust me, so they often asked my opinion on various things. It was especially valuable if they wanted to know my opinion about the gifts. Since I also knew their husbands, and men often talk about things they don't think their wives would be interested in, I had the advantage. One husband loved fishing, so his wife surprised him with a fishing trip to a luxury mountain resort where he could catch trout during the day while she sunbathed by the pool, shopped, and visited the spa. And in the evenings they enjoyed each other, thanks to my business colleague. I had a friend who served the bar at the club, and I made it clear to him that I would appreciate it if he would take good care of them. He was glad to agree, knowing that someday he would ask for a favor. I've done the same for men. Pretty soon they realized this and directly told me what they would like so that I could pass it on to my spouse. Some of them were unusual, but most of them were simple. One day, a wife asked me if she could trust me in almost everything that is not too immoral or illegal. A good bartender can keep secrets better than a priest. This satisfied her, and she told me about her fantasy that she would like to act out with her husband. It turned out that she was fascinated by being tied to the bed, giving her husband free access to do whatever he wanted with her. She wanted to try, but was afraid to tell her husband about it. It took some time to get it to the point, and a little help from my underwear contact for proper equipment. She dressed her, tied her to the bed in the hotel room she rented, and left right before his arrival. I had a key card. I stopped him for one drink. You've had enough to drink, Mr. Reynolds. Your wife wants you to follow these instructions exactly. She wants you to be open and understanding and give her this birthday present. Have a nice evening, sir. I hadn't seen them for 3 weeks and was worried that I'd pushed her away when she walked in, beaming, wearing a necklace with a big diamond in the middle. She told her friends that she got it for her birthday. Later, she found me alone. You know that's my collar, right? It's all funny, of course, but I'll never be able to thank you enough. And my husband wanted you to get this as a token of appreciation. $500 wrapped in very small, very wet panties. She giggled. I wrapped them myself. Make sure we have the most intimate table tonight. Okay, darling? I seriously thanked her for the tip later, after he had spent half an hour at the table and his wife was practically dancing in her seat. He grinned, held out his hand to his wife, and she licked his fingers while he thanked me for the service. 2 months later, I was promoted to assistant manager. He was the main sponsor. Every bartender who's worth anything has a reputation. It takes years to make a good one, but once you do, it will be worth its weight in gold. If you're asked, I can't tell you the name of the best mechanic or plumber in the city, a humble doctor, or a divorce lawyer, and persuade them to provide you with the necessary service. My friend, a lingerie dealer, participated in this, as well as in bartenders in 3 states. I also had an understanding with a bookmaker and several escort agencies. Again, it was necessary to walk a fine line. If a guy has a gambling problem and it caused problems with his wife or financial difficulties, guess who is to blame? It's the same with escorts if the wife gets wind of it. So it's a long job. That's why I put in the safes. The bookmaker allowed the guy to make only 2 unauthorized bets at a time, and the women were very careful. It didn't help any of their businesses to get unwanted publicity. None of these people gave me money, I didn't gamble, and I could pretty much get laid anytime I wanted for free. But if I needed a favor, they were there for me. Most of the time, I tried to direct them to others if they were in the right area. Many of our people owned their own companies, and it was a quid pro quo agreement. I got this idea from a friend. His wife hated football because she was sure that she and her friends had something to entertain them. We always had a big company. We rented the biggest TV we could find, set up a ballroom as a temporary bar. I ordered large plates of snacks to be prepared in the kitchen to help absorb alcohol. Even then, many wives and girlfriends eventually come to take them home. I talked to a few key women, introduced them to my lingerie specialist, and they went to the races. While the men were watching football, the women were sitting in a small conference room where they were treated to the latest fashion trends in underwear, the latest toys. I even had a couple more friends, one hairdresser, one makeup artist. They chose 3 women at random, of different sizes, facial features, and age, and gave them full makeup, and then brought them out complete with underwear to emphasize their shape and age. The kitchen served more refined snacks, and I had another friend, the wife of a local winemaker, who supplied the wines. It was a resounding success. In fact, the men had to wait on the women after the game. We kept our eyes open, and we had 3 taxis ready. The women insisted that I come at the end of the night to thank me. When they left, the 4 of them waited, giggling, until they were the last. "We love Aubrey," one of them exclaimed. "Look." She opened her coat, revealing a French maid's uniform, which flattered her very much. The next one had a PVC nurse's uniform. The next one had an almost transparent teddy bear. And the last one had a very beautiful lavender garter and nothing else. It was all unexpected, and in the end I blushed, which they found delightful. It became a regular event, to the point that we had to move it to a large room. I went to college online when I could, actually attended classes on Wednesday mornings and Thursday evenings. I made a few friends, but I didn't have time to build a relationship. There was one woman I really liked. We had a joint accounting lesson on Wednesday and a business class on Thursday. We sometimes met in the library and studied together. She was a little older than me, 31 years old. I could tell she was rich. It was obvious from her clothes, her jewelry, her car, but she was nice to everyone, even sometimes went a pizza and beer with us. She paid her share and never flaunted her wealth. Her smile could melt ice caps, sweet and caring one second, devilish and flirtatious the next. And she was hot as hell. She knew it, but she never insisted on it. She neatly turned off the college guys. If they bothered her, then they got a taste of her. I thought she'd make a damn good bartender. One evening, when the library was closing, I came out of it and saw that she was sitting on a bench with her shoulders slumped. I went over to say hello, and she looked up, tears still streaming down her cheeks. Not tears of physical pain, but raw emotions. "Do you mind if I sit down?" She nodded, fumbling in her purse for a napkin. I always carried a handkerchief that I inherited from my uncle. He might be wearing jeans and a torn t-shirt, but his monogrammed handkerchief was always clean and affordable. I gave her mine. "Who carries handkerchiefs with them now?" she said, wiping her cheeks. "Only old school gentlemen, in case they find a poor girl in need." It made her smile. She tried to get it back, but I told her to hold it. She sat twirling it in her hands. "Do you want to talk about it? Besides the scarves, I have pretty soft shoulders and very big ears. No personal plans, I promise." She actually giggled before frowning again. "I think you're the only man I've ever seen who I really believe when you say that. And yes, I'd like to talk. It might help. But not here. Would you buy a sad girl a cup of coffee?" I immediately understood what she was talking about: a small place for mom and dad near the campus. It was clean, cheap, and close, which made it popular with college students. The owners were respected for being famous for their intolerance of drunks and loudmouths. It was quiet there, with booths set wide apart. If it was late and they didn't need a table, they let you sit and study. We went over, got coffee, a piece of pie, an apple one for me, a cherry one for her. She took a few sips, ate half of the pie, leaned back in her chair and sighed. "You know I'm married, right?" I nodded. Only a blind man could have missed the ring on her finger. 7 years. I really loved him, you know? I thought I had an eternal man who would live happily ever after. "I don't think so. How long has he been cheating on you?" She seemed surprised by my directness. "How do you know? And what makes you think it was him?" I shrugged my shoulders. "Take it easy. In my job, you can usually tell the good people from the bad, and you're definitely one of the good ones. You seem to have money, so I don't think that's a problem. You don't have bruises, and you're not being mentally abused, so this has to be a scam. Why do I think it's not you? Because if that were the case, you wouldn't be sitting on a bench in the dark and crying. You would have lived a wild life. So it has to be him.